Namaskar. My name is Saurabh Nanda, and welcome to another episode of Such Conversations Matter. Today, I have invited a dear friend and somebody very special. His name is Siddhant Chaudhary. He's the co founder of LifePlugin. LifePlugin is one of the newest entrants into the personal development industry, which has taken the world by storm. Now, I know what you're thinking about. What exactly is personal development, and what are you talking about? Well, personal development is a mix of spirituality, psychology, nutrition, mental health, and so many other things where mentors, practitioners, followers from across the world come together to help you make a better version of yourself. I was fortunate enough to attend one of these events in Shimla a couple of years ago, and since then I've learned a lot about the industry and I want to share that conversation with you. So, hey Siddhant, how are you?
I'm great, Saurabh. How are you?
All good, man. All good. It's getting really hot. You're from Chandigarh, so you exactly know what I'm feeling in Jalandhar.
Yeah, I know.
How about in
So,
Singapore? I've heard it's very humid as well.
yeah, Singapore is pretty hot. Yeah, like it's like most of the year it's pretty hot. It's the same temperature, to be honest,
Hmm.
most of the year. So it's pretty humid, and yeah, but if it's breezy in the evening, so it's nice to go for a walk at sunset some days. But yeah, still pretty hot in here.
All right, Siddhant. So let's begin the interview, right? Um, First of all, before we begin with the main question that what is Life Plugin, I want to ask you about what is this global movement about personal development? It is taking the world by storm. There are people talking about masterclasses everywhere, this, that. What is happening, man? What is this global movement?
Uh, okay, personal development. I think at least for me, I picked on it when I was in college, first year of college, and it came to me in a form of I was working for a not-for-profit. You've probably heard ISEC, and they were doing a lot of internal trainings, and
Hmm.
a lot of trainers would come from organizations like Google, Facebook. And they would do like team building exercises. They would do leadership development workshops, which would be for you to get to know their own personal values, get to know what kind of role do you play in a team, right? So which was very fascinating stuff for me. At that time, they just called them, leadership workshops. But in the broader sense of things, now that you go out, this comes under the domain of personal development. Then you have people who are facilitators, right, who have these um, interesting tools, I would call them, which could be a game, it could be a simulation for people to realize interesting insights. There are people who are trainers, then there are great orators that sort of move people emotionally from stage, right? These are all like people who are in the personal development domain, as you can call them. And over the years, I think more and more people have started to figure out that teaching outside of our traditional school college education also has a huge potential.
Hmm.
So, and I think just the internet becomes a great place to sell. So you
Hmm.
see a lot of these people who now want to like host conversations out of their daily jobs because internet just allows you to do that more efficiently, easily. So everyone's jumping into the same game of being a host, which is bringing new ideas to life, right? And then there are people who are the professors or the teachers of oozing out amazing new concept, which could be anything from personal branding to
Hmm.
personal finance to
Hmm.
health to relationships, careers, how to independently move things in these domains, which, if you look at it, is all personal development. Anything that relates to you on a personal level, and it could be, on the professional front or personal, can be wrapped up in the same thing, right?
Right.
So it's a broadly loose term thrown around a lot, but yeah, like because it covers every aspect of
Hmm.
life, literally. Like you could also be like, I don't know, working on your spiritual side,
Right.
that's what personal development, right?
Yeah.
So how many of us do that? Don't know,
Hmm.
but yeah, everything boils down to that.
So the interesting concept of why I was attracted towards this entire movement was that yeah, everyone is developing personally. That is what the human experience of living is all about.
Yep.
But we choose different methods or whatever is available at our disposal. So in personal development movement, which I've seen, there's a lot of science involved, which is so heartening to see. So there are people who are actually studying different aspects of everything, like personal finance, all right, nutrition, these are already sciences, right? These are already studies, academic studies. But all the other aspects, how did science get involved in this?
I think most of them, like people, will base everything they're teaching, and I think that comes mostly from the Western world. Most of them will settle on psychology, or they will tell you, science based on psychology, science based on some sort of research done by certain academics, right? And what they're trying to convince you is, like because we tend to be very logical, we want to see reason everywhere, right? As human beings, and that's what sort of sells with most people. On the flip side, the amazing thing is there will be spiritual laws, right? Like spiritual gurus will tend to give you principles which will make no sense to you in a logical manner, right? Go do good and good will happen to you. Like, I don't know how, right? Like the how is missing, but I should trust this guy just because, right? Because he's successful, people believe him, he has a name for himself. So I guess like most humans tend to settle for something which can be explained with reason. Hence, people tend to lean towards science and more logical reasoning because also it's easier to explain and make sense out of. But I guess like yeah, that is definitely true, and that's why more and more people from Harvard and all these big schools are now getting into meditation because science has started to give you evidence on how it is lowering your stress, it is increasing your productivity, right? Like you are getting faster insights. If you go to alpha state, your body will relax. If you go to gamma state, your thoughts, you'll have interesting insights, right? If you go to theta state, that's when your productivity is 400%. So they're sort of figuring this out and makes for a convincing case. Okay. So I guess that's why we tend to lean more on that side.
ठीक है जी, ये तो I completely understand this because I'm an engineer, so I get automatically attracted to science. How did you get interested in this, and how did you get involved in this and decided to make this your career?
So same thing. I was in ISAC. We were doing these workshops year on year. There was a lot of stuff happening, but this was the most interesting, fascinating stuff. Every time I did a workshop, I would find something new about myself. Like the first time I remember, the first workshop I ever did was called Driver's Test. So basically, you answered these 60 questions, and by the end, you will be, you will get a profile, which would be one of the four. Either you're a perfectionist, either you're someone who's people pleasing, and there were like a couple more. But whatever you were, you had a pro and con. So I remember my pros were like you would take extra time and effort to perfect whatever task that you're given. But the con is you will always, exceed the deadline because you always want to, get more and more and more done, right? The other part, and then they would give you an insight or like something to help you. So my statement said that you should always do 80% of what you plan to do because that will reduce your tendency of just trying to dig more and do more. So your 80% is fine, so just do that. So all of those things were very fascinating facts, first of all, for at least for a 21-year-old at that age. So and I did that for 5 years. So the more I was involved in such work of leadership development, it came a point when we started getting trained from multinational company trainers, and then we were trained to train other students and go around the cities and colleges and run these workshops. I went to conferences all over the world, to Kenya, to Russia, Rotterdam, and then we would have externals who would come and run similar workshops with us. So at every stage, depending on which team I was working for, which team I was involved in, the feedback was different, the insight was different. I could do the same test with 3 different teams and I would have 3 different outcomes. But there will be certain similarities, which is the consistency through those 3 years. So it made sense to me. And I guess I wanted to do something about it. We wanted to take the same model of phoning kids at such a young age, 21, in their 20s basically, which happened to us, and make it more of a business where people can enjoy this because they have an interest. Sat on that idea for 5 years, did our corporate jobs for 5 years, and then after 5 years, after talking about the same ideas, finally said, I think it's time to give it a shot because you only regret the things that you never really get done. So it's like, yeah, let's do it, and it basically popped up as experiment. We said, let's do a weekend. Let's do a weekend in Goa. Told all our friends about it. 50 of them showed up. in Goa for a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we ran this whole program around personal values, productivity, how to be in flow, meditation sessions, which were a little more personal. Trying to make people experience how forgiving someone means, how having just a releasing of a traumatic experience, really makes your body feel. Doing yoga on the beach, doing CrossFit, in the morning, all stuff like that. So that became a hit with those 50 people. And on day 2, they were like, when are you doing the next one? Where is the next one? So that's when we knew, I guess we have to do a next one. And it's been 3 years since. So it's been a good role.
Awesome. Because I remember very clearly the one that I attended in Shimla.
Yeah.
And it was definitely an eye-opening experience. I enjoyed it so much. And for all of you, this is called LifePlugin. So before I could ask the question, the co-founder of LifePlugin here, he just went on to it because he loves the concept so much, I guess. So Siddhant, when I attended the Shimla summit, all right, and there were some 150 people there, right?
Loads, yeah.
So out of those 150 people, I must have met 30 people, all right, and had conversations with them over those 3 days, 2 nights time period. And I realized that a lot of them kind of knew each other from before. So there was a repeat of all these people. Like these people knew each other, they've hung out before, they've gone to these things before, and they just decided to come to Shimla. This time it was LifePlugin. Is it going to be like that always, or?
No, I think it's so half of the people do come back every conference just because, like, the idea for us, the premise for LifePlugin for us is to have a community of people who is into personal development, so that you can very willingly share your ideas in personal development or find friends around this all similar interest. Right? You're a health freak. Go meet other people who are equally excited. Some of them are already doing great in that domain. Some are just starting off. So makes for a great friend to find, right? The second is friendships. We want to make it a place where you come and find new friends because you've heard, like you're the average of the 5 people around you. And for a lot of us, that average 5 people around you over a period of, let's say, 2 to 3 years becomes very stagnant, right? That environment is not really always pushing you to do something new, step out of your comfort zone, because they see you in a certain perception. So for you to do new things, you need to have new people around you and, in that domain to sort of spiral up in that direction. So the other important factor is friendship for sure. So, and when they make good friends, this becomes the place where they meet them again every 6 months because everyone's busy with their own life, right? So we make it a point every 6 months, take out time for yourself to reflect on how your year has been so far. What did you achieve? How do you want to change things for yourself? How do you want to reshift your priorities, health-wise, career-wise, relationship-wise, whatever, right? And then have that space to share it with people that you like and friends that you really, hold meaning for you. Because then they can hold you accountable to all of those dreams and ambitions that you have or those epiphanies that you have in, like a talk or a session.
Right.
So that's important.
Okay.
So I think that's why a lot of people come back. And they will always be there.
Amazing. There's so many questions now I need to ask you. Okay, starting with the fact that let's just first define, LifePlugin with the categories of workshops that you have, like different topics and different workshops, just for the people who are experiencing or listening about this for the first time. What all workshops are there in LifePlugin?
So we don't have a very strict, let's say, curriculum that we stick to. It's basically, I call it personally a buffet of personal development topics that we put up for 3 days. So you go and pick and choose what you like from the buffet, but we have everything, right? So I would broadly put it in mind, anything related to the mind, which becomes like, a meditation practice which helps you with productivity, body practices, movement. That's why we have, people doing functional training, CrossFit, yoga, all of these, tools and techniques available, right? Then is relationships. How does relationship psychology work, right? How should you be forming deepening or meaningful relationships, not just like, with the opposite sex, but within friends and other circles, right? Everything is a relationship, right? If you look at it, or like relationships in business, how can you make better teams? Even those are like relationships, right? And then career-wise, again, personal branding is something, related to that. How can you use personal branding? How can you use, again, finances becomes a part of that. Then comes spirituality, which is more related to the soul, right? Like, how do you live your spiritual life in a modern context where we are always distracted by so many things, right? We have social media to deal with and all of these things. How do you still leave your spiritual side, and how do you have that feeling of fulfillment and also like contribution to society? Because we know, like, by the end of the day, you can make a lot of money, but that feeling of fulfillment only comes by doing meaningful work or contributing in a meaningful way, either to your work or outside by volunteering and stuff like that. So just trying to bag all of this up in a 3-day, a 3-day conference summit. Right. And yeah, there are all of these sessions going on. Some of them are you can choose from. You can choose which one calls to you more. And we also have a mini festival happening, which happens on day 2 of the summit, which is again all about discovering ancient sciences and modern, technology to help you get to know more about yourself. Interesting workshops happening around tantra healing, stress, busting stress, slacklining, interesting games where you come in with your most burning question, which you want answer to, and there are 12 people to offer you advice as your wisdom counsel. So lots of interesting stuff is and we call it playground because the idea is, go out there and see whatever you like and play with it and see what you get.
Nice. Okay, so I'm going to just simplify it for myself, for my own sake. So there is definitely strengthening of the mind, strengthening of your career, strengthening of the body, and then group exercises, and then some weird exercises like jumping into a bath full of ice. What is all that about?
Yeah, like the idea is to bring in practices which, are not offered in India, because we've had this experience, fortunately, because we've traveled a lot, me and my partner and our team. Most of us are based in Malaysia, Brazil, Russia. I'm in Singapore. My partner is in France. So luckily, we've been going to conferences and festivals where such crazy stuff happens. And we decided to bring it back to India because, that's how we want to contribute to the Indian audience. So ice bath is one such activity which has been scientifically proven to show a lot of do good for you, right? It makes you more sharp. It helps you with if you wanna you wanna change your neurological patterns, right? Like it helps you rewire your brain. Just cold showers, just jumping into a pool filled with ice. So if you are someone who's wanting to make a new habit, you should be having cold showers every day, right? So it does really good for your immune system. So we decided to, introduce that as an ice bath at our Shimla summit. And at the Goa summit, we've done a fire walk with people, which is more to do with just getting over your brain, like the small talk, that, voice in your head that keeps on saying, oh, this is dangerous, you can't do this, you will probably die. And then you do it because you have a peer group, which is, pushing you for it and encouraging you. And then you do it and you're like, I didn't even get a blister on my foot. And I thought I will probably be set on fire and die, the insight is your brain's tricking you. And once you've had that experience for yourself, where the brain tried to trick you, but you got over it, you understand that my brain does this 24/7. I could only prove it wrong because I had 50 other people pushing me to do this. And I saw 50 others do it before me. Right. So the idea is to, we have this saying, "Laaton ke bhoot baaton se nahi mante," and the fact is we have books and books and books of knowledge. But the idea is to change all of that knowledge into an experience that we design at LifePlugin so that you can get that experience. And when experience talks to you, it talks to you in a different way. No one has to, preach to you as a guru. You don't have to sit down like, I don't know stuff. Everyone knows. Everyone's very smart. Once you have that experience, it is in you, within all your 5 senses. And it's hard to get.
That's very wonderful. In fact, I believe in the same theory that humans basically learn from experiences. And one of the experiences that I saw in LifePlugin was that people were learning not only from you guys, the organizers, but also from people around themselves. Now, the next question is, but they also wanted to learn from people who were doing the workshops. Who are these people? How do you find these people, these experts? Because I mean, I never had heard of these people before in my life. And I feel like really ignorant right now, but I had never heard of them.
Yeah. For us, everyone that we bring at LifePlugin, because we've been involved with the personal development industry for at least the last 12 years. We started doing leadership development at a school, the college level, then ended up joining a company called Mind Valley, which is a publishing house in the US based. Got to know a lot of authors and practitioners through that network. So that's what we've been doing for the last 12 years. So basically, our 12 years of network and people we know. And yeah, these are breathwork instructors. These are coaches. These are coaches which are who are sports scientists who are training the Mahesh Bhupti and Sanya Mirza on how to be in peak state when you're at a competitive stage, right? Like doing that kind of work, working with the Indian cricket team, right? These are people who are now going into relationship counseling, who are counselors themselves. Some of them are just fitness freaks, out and allowed fitness freaks, right? Some of them are spiritual leaders. We had, in the last two conferences, we've had people who've been associated from institutes in Rishikesh who've come down, who we call just to share some insight from their spiritual world, because I think it's equally important. Whenever we, especially people our age, your and my age, when we see people in orange, we just tend to walk in the opposite direction, right? It's like nothing, no business with these guys. But I do believe everyone you meet, no matter how rich, poor, wherever they're from, you can learn something from them, right? It's all about do you find it valuable? So we definitely find it valuable. We also find it very valuable to talk about something controversial, which is psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
How to use it for mental health, how to use it just to explore your mind, if nothing else, right? You should know how this thing works. And there is this something that you can take in 30 minutes, you know what it is, right? Half of it is an illusion.
I'm gonna ask more questions about that, but I'm gonna stop you right there before you explain everything about it, because I wanted to ask another important question. So yes, all these people that you talked about, definitely superstars in their own fields, but a lot of people who I met in Shimla, they were there in the LifePlugin Summit in Shimla only and only to meet Vishen Lakhani, the founder of Mind Valley. Why is that so?
Full disclaimer, Mind Valley is the company me and my partner used to work for. Mind Valley is one of the big names when it comes to personal development space, because they have an online academy where you can learn from the best authors in the world. Vishen has been doing this dedicatedly for the last 22 years. Right, he's been involved. He started as a meditation teacher, and then started building this online platform called Mind Valley for other teachers to share their knowledge. So he spent 22 years in the domain. And once you spend that amount of time, for me, I believe you just spend 5 years in a particular domain, you reach that expert level because you start to see patterns, certain patterns in different things, and that is a synthesis of your original synthesis of what you have learned. That guy spent four times, that amount, 22 years. So he has his own synthesis of how he looks at personal development, given that he has experience of working with the best hypnotherapists, Marisa Peers from UK, best authors from US, best, teachers from all over the world. He's already written his first book. I don't know if you checked it out.
Buddha and the Badass, right?
That's the second book that's just come out. Yeah, so his first one was also, so I read the first one. I actually worked with the guy, then, read the first book. It was, I think it was something that everyone should read, because it sort of gives you a very different perspective on how reality works with people, right? The fact that you didn't know all of these names is because you were living a different reality, and then one of your partner had to pull you in to this direction and meet us. And that's how we connected, right?
True.
And I'm happy that happened, right? Because we have a very interesting conversations, right? So yeah, I guess the world is a huge place for everyone to have their own bubble and have their own reality and get lost there. Like the financial, world is a different world. They are lost in their reality, and the sadhus are lost in theirs, right? And Elon Musk is lost in his space. So all of us have our own realities, right, and very much plugged in there. So yeah.
Right. But how do you manage the expectation? Because I remember at last moment he couldn't make it and he had to cancel. So there was a video conference, and I remember so people really enjoyed it. I enjoyed that video conference, even though the network was bad and whatever. But I still enjoyed it. But a lot of people
Yeah.
were really disappointed. They were like, "I spent all this money and took out time just to meet that guy, and he's not here. That is
Yeah.
really bad." How do you
Yeah.
manage those expectations?
Uh, for for us, it was like it is what it is, right? Like as I went organizer, these kind of things happen, right? Like, and we were like we've had moments where we have our best speaker on stage, and like the lights go out, there's no sound, the room is dark, and everyone's like, "This is our best person, and he's on stage right now. This can't be happening." But things happen, right? They're out of your control. Vishen was kind enough to just offer everyone like a free product from Mind Valley. It's like I can't make it, but I really want to make it up. So, that's all I
He
can
had
do.
his Oprah moment.
Yeah. So that was that. The second thing is what we learned from that whole experience was that we are never, ever again, because we sort of announced Vishen way, ahead of time, because we had personal relations with him. So were in full confidence that this will happen. Something we learned and we made it a rule from that event onwards was to never call people to an event of LifePlugin by telling them, big names. Because we made it very clear that, we already know our sentiment is to make a community. Our sentiment is not like you should come to LifePlugin because we have the best, out of this world guy who you always wanted to meet, and this is the place where you can meet them. That's not the sentiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we've made it a rule where, and this is how we manage it, that we've told people every time someone asks us who's going to be, at the conference speaking, we tell them, well, if you're interested in personal development and you want to meet like-minded people who are equally enthusiastic, this is a place where you can meet them. But if you're coming here to meet like a superstar who you really like and you think this is going to be your pathway to meet them, then I think your motivation is wrong and LifePlugin is not for you. And I kid you not, as soon as you say that to someone, right, like that your motivation is wrong and this is how we see it, they are very clear in left and right if this is for me or not, which also helps us and them make a quick decision if it is really what they want or not, right? And we surely just want people who are excited about personal development and want to learn new ideas. It shouldn't matter who these ideas come from till the time that person knows what he's talking about. And then if you're there, you have the full right to inquire and like dig deep with ever who's teaching at the time, right? Our job is to make sure to bring you the best person for whatever we are talking about. If
Right.
it's breath, we should have a person who can make sure that in 15 minutes of doing a particular technique, you will have a certain experience. That's how certain that person should be. And that comes from like years of work, right?
Okay. I'm going to ask a question following from this because this is very interesting right now. So as you said, it almost becomes like a binary choice whether you're in it or you're not, whether you like it or not, right? So I know you. So I also know about Siddharth because we had a conversation a couple of years back and we put it on YouTube. Um, you're a college dropout. He's a economics master's kind of a guy, and then Gautam.
Went on to become a consultant, all of that, yeah.
Yeah, and then Gautam, he's pretty much like the genuine Indian kid he is because he's an engineer like me, right?
Yeah.
So, but all of you left your individual worlds, came together,
Yeah.
and now you're saying it might not be for everyone. So, is it only for people who are misfits, or is it a hippie thing? What is it, man?
I think it's different for different people. Okay, I can say this for myself. I just find this meaningful work. Okay, and I decided that I want to probably do something in this space. Right, I want to be a contributor to this space, then be a teacher in this space. Very different thing. I organize events. I like parties. So then I do the social events. Right, like that's me as a personality, and this is how I'm linked to something which I find meaningful work. Right, I make my money in Singapore, but this is also something I like doing, so I make time for it, right? I travel the world with it, and I have lovely time. And this is a space where I meet the most interesting people, right? So that's my setup. That's how I do it. There's Gautam, who is, very, very, invested in exploring all that there is, which we can use as tools to improve ourselves, right? Like I've seen him change around his health and lifestyle, get that six pack ab, which I would never get probably because it's too much work. But right, like he's made those lifestyle changes and done the work, and now he's someone who's a great teacher. Sid, on the other hand, is someone who chose to be a coach. He could have been 10 different things. He chose to be a coach, and he works with people like very much emotion based, right? Like how do you work as a human being in relation to your emotions, and that just changes the perspective of how you look at everything, your job, your relationship with your spouse. So we are doing very different things, even though we are in the same space, but we are worlds apart. Who is, or there's a guy from Bombay who's in the best college, was working with Eon, as a consultant, didn't find meaning in it, was, like, wasn't having fun. And because I know Sid, I can tell him it didn't talk to his soul then, and then, tried to do something different. I've had people who were CAs, the financial banking sector, call me and ask me, I want to make a career switch. Do you think I should go to personal development space? And I'm like, bro, there are no rules, right? Like, you can do whatever. I know of people who were in London, investment bankers, making the biggest money, like, raining in checks of millions of dollars, right? And they quit all of that to start like a YouTube channel, which are all about interviewing people in personal development space and then, making retreats and whatnot. So there are all sorts of people.
Okay.
Again,
So that sounds amazing. But, and I think because even though these people come from all different backgrounds and they're so different, but there is this one common thread of personal development and growing and helping others, which binds you together.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question, the tribe. For the first time in Shimla, I heard that term being used by you guys in a very different context. You said LifePlugin is a tribe. Tell us about that.
I think the concept of tribes have always existed. Like, we were hunter-gatherers, lived in tribes, right? We weren't as nuclear as a family unit, right? Like, the tribe was your family, right? Someone gave this example once, which really stuck with me. He's like, when we were living in tribes, we used to move together, right? If a child in the tribe was crying, his biological parent or like mother or father didn't have to come and rescue the child. Because the child was part of a tribe, anyone near to him could just pick up the child and console him, right? Which is saying, like, we are one big family. We share responsibility, we share resources, we share comfort, we share food, we share everything. And we are here to take care of each other because we are one big family. So I think that has always been a human design, which we have worked, it has helped us as a race. Over time, it sort of has diminished. And then Seth Godin, very famously, when he wrote one of his books, again, sort of, the word had a renaissance of its own, wherein he said the concept of tribes is still very much alive. You only need 100 people who believe in your idea. You need to, reach out and find those 100 people, and they will do the magic for you. So I guess for us, it's stuck from there, but it is in human design that, you need to find your tribe, depending on what you want in life, right? So if you want to be good at X, Y, Z thing, you need to find those people who are already good at those X, Y, Z things, or people who are passionate about those X, Y, Z things, or, like people who are wanting to have conversation about those things, people who are doing events around those X, Y, Z things, and that's your tribe, right? Like, that's where you learn from, upgrade yourself, right?
Yeah.
Be in the know of what is happening, what is the latest thing which is happening around, right? You get to meet and network with people that you want to build up ideas with, right? And you will find your supporters and cheerleaders there. And that's what you need to do the things that you really want to do in life.
Amazing. That is so insightful, man. Thank you so much. Now let's come back to the interesting question of psychedelic and psychotropic drugs and their experiments. So if you don't know, on Netflix recently, I think a month back, there was a new documentary kind of a movie which was posted. And I think now the rest of the world can watch it because it's on Netflix.
honestly.
And so I would like to listen from Siddhant what he has to say about it, and let's probably have a small conversation about it, even though it's illegal in India and Singapore.
There is a movement in India to make it legal,
Well,
which I'm
there'll
happy
always be a movement, but yes.
about.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Siddhant, please tell us about that, and let's start with LSD. I think that is the most famous one the people know about.
Okay, this could be a long conversation in itself, but I will start with this. I am no expert, for this topic, but I am very passionate about this topic. Okay, the fact is that I think like just from everything that people who haven't done it, right? People who haven't done it run scared shitless when you talk about these things because I feel like language plays a big role. As soon as you call these things a drug, most of the people are like, these things are bad because language has a connotation, right? So I think that's one. For people who have done it, they know like it is nothing that, does anything different. It does take you in a different space for a little while to experience something different and novel. Some would say novel, some would say crazy, someone would say trippy, right? Whatever. Words don't do justice to what the experience is, right? Like it's just hard to explain. But yeah, the reason I am so passionate about it is because more and more research has been happening through foundations like MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, which is based out of US. And this was sort of shut down during the 80s with, like the whole politics that came in. But privately funded institutions still carried out that research. And now they have done clinical science, and science proves it that, drugs like LSD, MDMA can be used for treating PTSD, for couples therapy, right? For people who are, it's hard for them to like voice or verbalize their trauma or their pain. So these kind of drugs with guidance of counselors and professionals who can guide through them can really help people, come out of their shell in a way, so to say. So I think these things should be made public, and the fact that things like mushrooms naturally grow in our environment, and the fact that our ancestors used these in a brew, right? In ceremonies, right? Like there used to be these ceremonies where it was a initiation for the child, where he turns into a man today, and then they have these ceremonies where they would give a brew to a child, then tell them now tonight you will spend the night in the jungle by yourself, and if you survive, you will be a man, which was basically giving them a shot of a something like a acid or a mushroom. He's basically sitting in a jungle where there might be moderate risk, not too much, but he's tripping on shadows the whole night, which is scaring the hell out of him, right? Because he doesn't know what's happening. He's hearing things, he's seeing things, but the next morning when everything sort of subsides, he realizes that it wasn't nothing. It was just his mind playing games on him, right? Which is a lesson for him to be learned. That either you overcome your mind, right, or your mind will overtake you. And if you learn that lesson, you're ready to be a man and take responsibility in life. Welcome to life. Now I'll tell you how to kill prey and bring food home. That's step number 2, right? Like that's how they used it, but they used it with a lot of seriousness, right? Like the whole village will gather. Yeah. The women will sing, right? The elderly will sit on a side, right? Someone will come and guide the kids on what to do. There was so much seriousness in the whole process that it was hard not to pay attention and not to respect what was happening, right? Which in our drug culture is not the case. We will take acid and MD and walk down the street, be at a festival, mix alcohol and everything that we could find because we are using it for pleasure, just to get a kick, just to get a high, and there is no respect for using a thing like this. And that's when things go wrong. And
you're absolutely right. And coming from a psychology background, and I've read studies, and also through the Netflix documentary, which everyone should watch, there are psychologists in that who talk about using it for all the things that you said, PTSD, curing PTSD or relationship problems. So all those things are definitely advantages of using this particular drug as medicine. And not only LSD, but also naturally occurring things like magic mushrooms or peyote in Mexico or stuff in the Amazon forest and so on. But here's my question. how do you use these things? So these things can cure things for us. How do you use these things for personal development then? Like if it's not for pleasure, because you're already in a tribe which is so loving,
Mm.
then why do you need this to open up your mind more? Why?
Uh, I think it's for okay. So I know a lot of my friends who definitely once a year will just do this
Mm.
to think about out of the idea, like out of the box ideas for themselves, just to question everything around like
Mm.
how they have been thinking about things. Because we tend to think in certain limitations, right? I have friends who are doing vision boards after dropping certain amount of acid, right? I have friends who are just indulging in painting walls after like they're on acid, right? Like it's different capacity and some people do use it for leisure, right? Which is also fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it for leisure, but the fact that what is your relationship with the drug is question number one, right? Because if your relationship with the drug is not good, if that's dependency or that's escapism, then it's not healthy. But if your relationship is not that, but it's just leisure in a healthy manner, then I guess you can do anything. Some people read the same book and then they read it on acid, and it has a different meaning to them, speaks to them differently, right? Like your same regular life routine things become more interesting all of a sudden because you started to see the same thing from a different perspective, right? So I think why isn't that helpful, right? Like, and if you're just doing your daily things a little differently, and if you can find a little bit of different meaning in the same thing, I think that's just adding on to your experience, right? Like if you like something interesting in like the everyday conversation you have with your best friend, your flatmate, your spouse. Hopefully you don't have young children, but like I think that's interesting. And why not?
Okay,
Everyone
so since you're talking about all those things, you have to tell everyone so that we have a wholesome conversation about this and not just one way. Are there any side effects of these things, and what is the limit if there is a limit?
So there are a bunch of interesting books which you should look up. I should probably send you a link to a few of them.
I'll mention that in the description below, so I'm safe, you're safe.
Yeah, and I will definitely send a bunch of more podcasts that people should listen to. There are these scientists who've been synthesizing this drug, and they've written well explained books on like what is quantity, in what like what substance should you use it. The side effect is, and this is like the one of the biggest ones which stuck with me, is like when people do a lot of these drugs, there comes a time where their experience of reality is morphed because you spend so much time being in this other state of mind that you start to confuse with what is real. Right? This physically where I am right now, is this real? Or what I see in these alternate states, is that real? So should I start acting in accordance to what this is, which I experience for those prolonged durations? And if I act in those accordance in this physical world, will it still work? That's where people start to go wrong, right?
Okay.
People don't know how to integrate that experience or whatever experience they had into daily life, daily practice, right? So I think that's where people should draw a line for themselves. What relationship do you have with it? Like I know people who would say I casually smoke it at the end of the day, right? It's chill, bro. It's chill, right? Then the question you have to ask yourself: what if you don't get it for a month? Is it still chill, right? If it still is chill, it's great. Then the next question would be: have you ever noticed your productivity patterns with and without the use of this drug? Right? Is there a change? Right? I know personally for me there is a change. Right? There was a time when I was using it on a regular basis and my productivity would fluctuate. And then there were 3 weeks when I did not, and my productivity actually skyrocketed. Luckily, I was working with a coach who was also like a therapist counselor, so I could have this discussion and have this observation about my own behavior. I think most people never take up time to reflect on their own behavior. So right, like keeping to have these checks and bounds. I had someone who I used to pay to keep me in check about relationships, my habits, my health, all of these things. Just so that someone's asking me on a week to week, once in 2 weeks, okay, so give me a check on how's health doing. how's mood doing, how's your drug use doing, how's this, how's that, right? Like, so if you can do that and draw a line and keep yourself in check, everything's good.
Awesome.
Most people don't. Most people don't, and I think that's where things start to go away.
I think that's a very very well put, scientific, and even evolved insight into psychedelics. And thank you so much for that. So Siddhant, I'm going to ask you one very important question, because you pointed it out earlier that the entire personal movement, and we're going back to it a bit, um, is about using the internet a lot.
Mm.
So when you use internet, you get connected to people everywhere, like you and I right now. And so, do you think being involved in the personal development movement, where you can connect with people and relate with people thousands of kilometers away from you, has made you more of a global citizen? How much technology has played a role in making you a global citizen, if you consider yourself one?
How has technology played a role for me? I think it's played an immense role. I started when I was 21 years old, started with this not-for-profit. The first thing that I really picked up after events and doing projects, socially driven projects, was actually online social media marketing, right? And I grew up with the internet. And now if you look at it, especially pandemic, we know for a fact that everything digitally has skyrocketed. E-commerce is having a ball, Netflix is having a ball, everyone's like, which is digitally driven businesses are on the rise because they are more scalable, right? More people can have access to them because they come at a cheaper cost, right? The things which are like physical events or infrastructure costs more, right? People have to move spaces, people are lazy. So I think technology, all in all, has played a great role. All of my work in the last 10 years has been with technology-related companies. Mind Valley, very technology-driven, built their own technology, right? Built their own platform. Went on to work with an influencer marketing agency. We were building again SaaS product, online product for influencer marketing. Data is king, right? I recently read now data is more expensive than oil. It is the highest, most expensive commodity at the moment, right? So that's where we are heading. So technology is playing a great role, will play a great role, and if you have it Elon's way, he wants to make us all cyclops, integrated with technology. So there's someone who's determined to go in that direction, and I think everyone is. So that's definitely been there. What did you ask for that?
So the other question, or the part of the question was, do you think you are this global citizen having this global consciousness or not? Do you believe in something like that?
So I think if you asked me this like 2-3 years ago, I would say, yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I've been traveling, I travel, I love meeting different cultures, blah, blah, blah. But right now, my honest feeling is just like this definition of being a global citizen has I don't know what it means anymore, right? Because there is so much happening in the world. Some of it is relatable, some of it is not. Some of them I morally should abide by, right? But on a personal, basis, I do not agree with. So I'm so confused at what being a global citizen means in today's world, right? Because but on the other fact, I do agree that there is this global perspective to look at things. I don't know if I'm a global citizen, and I don't know if I'm the ideal one or someone else is, but definitely a global perspective on how we are all connected. I think the pandemic in some way has showed us that, right? We figured out at the time that, if something happens in China, it does affect us and everyone else in the world, right? If one business shuts down in X country, Y also suffers because we have supply chains tied to each other. We do business like this, right? So it's exposed that network on how dependable we are on each other, even though we will enter the same boardroom and fight with each other countries and put, sanctions and bans on each other, right? And fight it out and show that we have the most powerful, your country is the most powerful country in the world, right? And with that suits and ties, right? But yeah, I think people have now realized in the last 5 years at least, from everything that we've seen, fires in Amazon to everything that fires in Australia to floods all over, that yeah, people love to contribute to each other. People love to come to each other's help, right? It's never been we've never been more connected. People are, randomly showing gestures of love and support, right? And I think, yeah, that definitely makes you feel connected. And I'm in Singapore and I feel like getting involved with social causes here because I'm like, I live here.
Right.
Even though they don't treat me like a citizen, right? I am treated like a foreigner here, right? I can't be involved with their conversations of how policy should be because that's not my space. But I still feel like I should be involved in volunteering and being here because I live here. I have friends here. I have like a new family growing here, a new tribe, let's say, growing here.
Right.
So I need to contribute to my space in some capacity.
Awesome. That's a very mature outlook, man. Really appreciate it. Okay, Siddhant, one final question. I'm a career consultant, so people are going to ask me sooner or later. I want to get into personal development, and probably they will not reach you directly. So this is a platform where I would definitely request you to give your message to all those students who are probably in the same boat as you were some years back. And what advice would you give them into getting into personal development or generally career advice?
I think no one has to get into personal development. Everyone is already in, as you said, human experiences are personal development, right? You just need to make sure you're constantly learning something new, right? And you should have your sources of learning something new. What advice I would give to kids who are in college? I would say don't listen to your parents. Also, stop being dependent on your parents. I was talking to a bunch of kids, again, 20 college-going students, and some of them said like my parents, they tend to make decisions for us, right? What can I do? I was like, they only make decisions for you because you don't make a decision, right? Like because you never made a decision, and you don't stand with your decision, they tend to make all the decisions for you, and that's why I think most of the kids are not happy, right? So I would say number one, try and do as many random things as you like. The more you can do them, the more you will get to know which are the things you actually like, right? Being a YouTuber is a perfectly fine job in the future, right? So if you feel like doing that, do that, right? Second would be don't be dependent on parents because the fact that you're dependent on your parents is the fact that they will make your choices. The day you can be independent of them, stop asking them for money, stop asking for all of these trips that you want to go to and manage that on your own, is the day you will also get the freedom to do whatever you want to do with your life, right? So that's second. And yeah, third would be, I think you should take your biggest risk in your 20s because after that is the time to sort of narrow down on like the one thing or the two things that you really want to grow in and become a best at. So 20s is to fuck up. Basically, do whatever. You can jump from one job to the other, leave this thing, go to the next one. But you need to have your reasons, right? It's not that I'm just doing this because, I got bored, right? Like, that's a different attitude. But, like, knowing that, I thought this would be something like this, but it's not. So then maybe I would try something else, right? Like, so maybe have that approach. So 20s are for you to fuck up and learn from. So make the most of it because no one's going to blame you. And yeah, hopefully by the end of your 20s, you will know yourself better. And that's the game. Like, that's the game within the game, right? Know yourself better so that you can then make better choices. Right.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, guys. My dear friend Siddhant, always blatant, always straight to the fact, always a rebel, but has a very sound, substantial backing for all the things that he says. And that's why we have amazing, wonderful conversations. Thank you so much, Siddhant, for being here on the show today. If you have any feedback you want to connect, I'm going to mention all the links, including link to the LifePlugin website. Please talk to him. He's always available. Thank you so much, Siddhant, for being here.
Thank you for having me.